Thanks, Luciana. It's needless to say too much about Sequoia or Luciana, but it's definitely a shot. And I'll pass the mic to you to introduce yourself for a couple moments before we open the floor for questions. We have a couple of questions to warm up, but there's definitely questions coming from the founders here. So thanks for taking the time to chat with us this evening, Luciana. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Whatever I can do to be helpful to the Romanian ecosystem and Central and Eastern European ecosystem, I'm here to do it. So I'm originally from Buzău, from the beautiful city of Buzău. I was born and raised there. My parents are still there, and I left after high school. I did my undergrad in the US. I have a math background. I thought I'd teach math, and by luck and serendipity, I got into technology very early on. So I've been in venture in Europe for over a decade, always based in London and working with founders who start in Europe, but ideally will have the ambition to define global categories, not just European champions. I was with Excel for 8.5 years. I joined in 2011. And I joined Sequoia a bit over a year ago to build out our team and our efforts in Europe. When I joined, it was pretty much me. Now we're 10 people. We have an office. We have a promising early portfolio, and of course, we're very early on our European journey. But we're excited. There's a lot of good stuff happening, and Central and Eastern Europe is actually, I think, one of the more interesting up and coming areas. While I was at Excel, I invested both in consumer-facing businesses and in enterprise businesses. I guess the one that you guys will know best is UiPath, where I led the Series A and was the board member there for 3-4 years before joining Sequoia. Companies like Deliveroo, companies like Hopin, where I led the seed, and Miro, where I led the Series A, and businesses like that. So I would say a combination of consumer and B2B. A bit more on the B2B side, but I like both. As Sequoia, we were investing in Europe already, but we were doing it from a distance, which typically means that you find companies slightly later on. So we were super fortunate to invest in Klarna out of Sweden a decade ago, and Unity out of Denmark a decade ago, and UiPath as a growth investment, which is how I got to know Sequoia because I was on the board. But we want to invest early, and we want to be able to help our founders early. So it was just a very natural evolution to have a team based in London. Our tagline is from idea to IPO and beyond. So ideally, we meet founders really early at seed stage, and ideally, we're in business with them for decades. And with this in mind, we actually totally flipped our fund structure. I don't know if you guys read about it. We now have an evergreen structure, which means we never have to sell shares. So even after companies go public, which probably for you feels like an eternity away because you're just getting started, but you might get there sooner than you realize. And even after companies go public, we continue staying on boards and being involved with our founders in the long run. But it's always more exciting to get involved earlier. That's, I think, when you build that relationship of trust with founders and being in the trenches in the early days, when in reality things are harder, right? You have existential problems early on, and with scale, you still have problems, but not existential, hopefully. We think really long term. We're as global as it gets from a venture perspective. We expanded into China and India about 15 years ago. We have US and Europe work as one team, so we're one partnership. I happen to be based in London. My partners are based in the Valley, but I could be based there and work exactly the same, and vice versa. My partners could be based here. And the spirit behind that is that we think of Europe and the US in some ways as one market when it comes to technology, which might sound crazy, but what that really means is that in some categories, not all of them, but in some categories, you're going to have one category leader. UiPath is actually a good example. When Sequoia invested, they look. I say they because I was with a different firm at the time, but they looked at the RPA market globally. There were US companies, there was a British company, and there was this Eastern European company, UiPath, and the consensus was that UiPath would be the global category leader and would win in the US, in Europe, everywhere, and that's what happened. So then we went ahead and made an investment. There are also, I think with consumer, it's a bit different. But that's the idea. We think just culturally, from an entrepreneurship perspective and investing perspective, there are a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities. And so to say, we speak the same language in the US and Europe, which is not really the case in India and China. So when we went to China and India, those are separate funds, separate teams. Should I stop talking? I can talk. I can go on and on about Sequoia, but I also want to make sure we use the time as you guys wish.
Which is great, and we'll touch based on that. What you just said, or some of what you just said, helped me coin three questions. I think three or two questions. One is around was Europe in general and Eastern Europe overlooked by the Sequoias and the likes of the world? Because this is the media pitch that Eastern Europe was overlooked so many years.
Oh, maybe.
How does it seem to you? Or yeah, being early investor in UiPath shows a different picture. But what did you saw in such a company, and what do you think that helped them to actually become the UiPath that they are today?
So two questions. The first one about international funds looking at Central and Eastern Europe. I would say maybe, but I don't think for any firm, Sequoia included, I don't think it's that they would not have wanted to invest in Central and Eastern Europe. I think it's more that finding those companies and those founders early on was not as obvious, because it's a relatively fragmented ecosystem, right? There are a lot of different hubs in Central and Eastern Europe. And I think it's just a matter of those founders finding their way in front of a Sequoia or another international fund. And I'm sure that those funds would recognize talent and would make the investment, which is kind of what happened with UiPath at the Series A. But I would say probably funds were not on the ground actively sourcing in the region until now. And the reason is just the ecosystems were less mature. And I think now it's changing. Does it make sense? And then with UiPath, so I met Daniel in November 2016. They already had $3 million in recurring revenue. We ended up leading the Series A in February. And what I saw at the time was potentially a new category. Like, I didn't know what RPA was, and I had to go back to the drawing board and do my homework and try to understand this new technology and try to understand whether this new technology could become a category of its own. So I thought, well, this is new and fresh and exciting. And for any venture capitalist, those are the best discoveries and the best calls. They already had really, really nice customer references. So when I talked to customers, there was a lot of excitement around UiPath's product. And they had Daniel, who's as ambitious as they come. So it was a good combination.
Got it. Speaking about markets, most of the pains, beside the pain of actually getting to customers in such an early stages, coming from actually positioning your value prop and finding the market frame of reference. Are there any tips and tricks that you can share with founders when you look at founders to actually help yourself as an investor to position their future trajectory that could help the founders in the call here to actually think of another perspective of finding their market frame of reference, they're finding their market, their addressable market, something that's not so obvious? Because you can say that some of the companies are in the developer tool space or in automation or in some sort of an education, but is there something more to that to help them narrow down their positioning, help them narrow down their position and nail down the positioning?
I'm not sure I fully follow the question, but I'll try to answer what I think you're asking. And I would have two answers. One is we have something called a company design program, which is it's pretty much exactly this, trying to figure out your customer journey, trying to figure out your ideal customer and how to talk to your ideal customers, how to tell the story of your product. And it's a 45-hour program over 3 weeks. And we try to distill pretty much everything we learned with all the companies we worked with for the past 5 decades. And it addresses seed stage companies. So I think that can be helpful. That said, to be honest, I think most of the successful entrepreneurial journeys I've seen are the ones where the founder really wants to solve a problem and where the problem is very clear and they might not know yet how to solve it, and that's okay, and time will tell. But I think if it's a product looking for a market, that is not a recipe for success. Was that your question?
Yeah, something around that. We recently actually talked with Nicolas Design from Algolia now at YC, and he was telling us as well about the CISP, the solution in search of a problem. I'm glad that you've pointed out as well. Let's open the floor for questions coming from you, the founders. There's definitely curiosities and questions that we still have for Luciana. But let's pass it on to you. Who wants to start first? Just open the mics. You can leave your cameras on as long as it doesn't distract the whole audience. I see Bogdan as well. Hi, thanks for joining, being able to join.
Okay, I'm gonna go enjoy my Friday.
I'm happy to open the floor for questions. Hello,
I see
Luciana.
Sandro actually, Bogdan. Sorry.
Yeah. Hi.
And Kenneth then.
You can hear me, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. We're good now. Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah, awesome. Hi, Luciana. Thank you. My name is Sandro. I am a Colombian building from Vilnius, from Lithuania, and we're building an interactive TikTok for language learning. My question, I want to jump right away into my question. I very much love what you shared about, there is an actual problem that you're trying to solve, and probably my heart is truly committed to it, and I believe that technology is going to help me do it. I am having right now some sort of a challenge of conveying that, and when it gets down into putting it into an actual conversation with a VC, the large problem, of course, the big vision that I have, it starts moving down into a series of statements that tend to look more as, a product looking for, for a market, right? So what I'm trying to say is that at this point, my product is trying to position it as a future income sharing opportunity, meaning we're going to look for underserved communities, underserved countries and economies. We're going to teach English to the kids and young people there, and we're going to get them into jobs that are going to change their lives. But I don't know, it's just that at the point where I am at right now, it seems a little bit far-fetched, and it's what are you trying to do? And that's kind of my challenge right now. And of course, it tends to vary, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but it varies on the kind of the scope of the different type of VC that I'm talking to. Maybe if it's an angel that is coming from a different industry, or, I get mixed responses, and I'm still kind of juggling with that part. What is your take or probably recommendation on this matter?
I mean, honestly, I think we would have to spend a lot more time understanding your business model if the question is, how do I convey my business model clearly to investors? Unless I misunderstood the question. I'm sorry if I did.
Not a problem. So no, it's more probably how to articulate the large vision, right? Or, ways that you have seen people articulating a large vision that sometimes look a little bit far-fetched. At an early stage, that would make sense, because at this stage, it's a problem of execution rather than having a big dream, right?
So what I like to see when I talk to founders is two things. I like to see that they know what they want to do in the next 6 months. I like to see that they're executing fast on a short-term vision and they're not fooling around. And then I like to see that they have a large ambition for 10 years out. Call it a moonshot, call it the, dream scenario. And I think if you know what to do very short term, and if you know that you want to shoot for the stars very long term, I think that part in between will come. You don't need to know what you'll be doing 2 years out. So I would say, again, very high level, based on the high level information that you shared with me, be very clear about your wedge or your next 6 to 12 months and what your milestones are and what you want to do in terms of hiring, in terms of whatever business model, whatever it might be. And then try to articulate also the fact that, of course, this is just the beginning, and then the very, very long-term vision. And in most cases, the long-term vision might not actually end up being what you articulate today, but what this tells me as an investor is that you think far out and that you have the level of ambition that's aligned with ours. And maybe that's not exactly the direction where you will end up, but it means you think big and you will want to build something really big. I hope that makes sense. Like, no one expects you to know the journey every single step of the way. Like, focus on all the time, focus on the following 6 months, and then it's, compounded good decisions and compounded good execution will give you a great outcome. Does that help?
It makes a lot of sense, definitely. Thank you for the detailed answer. Yeah.
Thanks, Sandro. And please keep adding something about your companies before asking the question, or after asking the question, just to give more context. Kenneth, I saw you recently earlier. Could you take on? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Luciana.
I don't know where to look. Sorry. Oh, here. Okay, found you. Hi.
Yeah. Hey, hi there. Well, my name is Kenneth. We're New Credit. We are a trade finance marketplace, connects SMEs with global lenders. We actually have already generating revenue for last month, $110,000 US, and we actually do becoming more like a SaaS business now, because before we earn money for the interest premium that we introduce deals to the lenders that we work with. But now we're integrating more data to allow the lenders that we work with so that they can use the data infrastructure and the blockchain infrastructure for verifying the transaction and the documents. As you know, that trade finance has a lot of fake documents in this.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So my questions to you actually is that what is your minimum ticket size? And also, how much equity that usually you guys are taking for seed Series A company? And also, do you have any location preference? Where is the parent company located? Is it you guys okay with Cayman Island company or UK company or a Delaware company in the US? Is there any preference?
Any location is fine. From a legal perspective, yes, Delaware is always easier for an American fund, but any location is fine. We invest everywhere from $100K to $300 million per equity check. Anywhere from a couple of percentage points ownership to 20%. I would say the dream scenario in a Series A is to get to 15-20%. In today's market, you get what you can. And I would say with seed stage companies, probably 10%, no board seat. And the idea is that then we follow on in the Series A.
Right. And you will be helping the startup to go to the US market, right? Or you just hands off, once you invest?
No, we give you money and then you never see us again. We definitely try to help. And a big reason why I don't know if you were here for the beginning, but a big reason why we set ourselves up as one team between the US and Europe is exactly this, because we've been on the ground in the US for 50 years. And we have a wonderful network of many, many companies and many founders, and we have wonderful operational teams internally. We have 17 people in our talent team. We have a data science team, a marketing team, and the list goes on. And that's the spirit. We want every European founder to have access to everything that we built there. And that's why we set ourselves up as one team between the US and Europe.
Right, great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Of course. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kenneth. I guess this opens up the question, or the larger question of how do you actually help founders in any other way that you've just explained to Kenneth, Luciana? Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think I don't want to sound arrogant, but there is a lot of help by having Sequoia as a brand on your cap table alone, and the credibility that it brings. To give you an idea, 27% of the NASDAQ is Sequoia-backed companies at the early stages that then end up going public, like Apple and Google and Snowflake, and the list goes on. It helps a lot with credibility with customers, with hiring, especially there's such a war for talent right now. I find that it opens a lot of doors. So I'll leave that on the side. Then it's the network of having been in this business for 50 years. It's, you know, putting you in touch with wonderful founders for mentorship and to exchange ideas. It's the fact that we're probably directly connected or 1 degree of separation with all the great operators and technology globally. And we can get you to talk to them whenever. It's our own operational teams. So most of my partners were actually world-class operators themselves. One of my partners was the VP engineering of Google for 10 years. He had a team of 8,000 engineers. One of my partners ran product for Facebook. One of my partners ran go-to-market for VMware from like 50 million to 5 billion, and the list goes on. So we have a lot of operational DNA on the team. And then, as I mentioned, we have specialty teams that work with our investor teams. So we have 17 people in talent. I think I mentioned that. We have a customer relationship team, and what they do is build relationships with key buyers and corporates for enterprise companies, and so on and so forth. So I would say it's the brand, it's the network, it's the operational DNA on our team. And then at the end of the day, hopefully it's the personal chemistry that you build with a partner who's your window within Sequoia. Ideally, you know, we like building the type of relationship where the founder will give us a call with good news or bad news, and we'll seek our advice, and we'll consider us a real sounding board in making key decisions. That's what I call success in our relationship with a founder.
It definitely seems that any founder will end up leading in a great company over there. Well, what can help them, or other ways said, what can go wrong in establishing a relationship with you as their early investor or Series A investor? Any wrong steps? Because yeah, we know the success stories, but what are the don'ts of establishing a relationship with you and the likes?
Honestly, knock on wood, I've been very fortunate, and I think I have really good relationships with my founders. But what I will say is, think about it. It's self-selection, right? Because as individuals, we choose to work with certain founders, and as founders, you choose to work with one of us investors, and you choose us on your board. So I think there's a little bit of like dating before committing, right? And before actually making an investment. So I think you can tell if there's the right chemistry, if people are aligned, if they have the same level of ambition, etc. Then I would say just transparency, I think, is important. And I think as an investor, just keeping calm no matter what is important. Yeah, I think transparency. I can say that I mean, there are exceptions, like where you hear of things really going wrong. I think transparency, being open, like if we know what's happening, then we'll be able to help. Obviously, if we don't know what's happening, it's impossible to help. What can go wrong? I mean, obviously, sometimes companies don't work out. That's, you know, is the nature of our business. So
yeah,
that is what it is.
But so these root with some of the traits that founders should have. I mean, being transparent with you, it's just an effect of being transparent, probably overall, or this is how they grow their team. Are there any other traits? I saw you, Igor. So you're next. Are there any other traits that you would add up to this in a founding team? Being open, being
traits that I don't want to see, or traits
that you want to see, that you want to see. Yeah, that you want to see.
Oh yeah. Intellectual curiosity, I think, is really important. And just always wanting to learn, figure out what's there, try to improve the product, talk to your customers, look at competition, just like relentless intellectual curiosity. I think that's key. Just like sheer hunger and drive. I think when you wake up every day just like wanting to succeed, it informs every single decision you make throughout the day. And yeah, just being relentless from that perspective, I think is really important. I would say those are the two most important ones, in my opinion.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Let's go back to Igor from Lawyer. Also mention a bit about the company as well to give more context.
I don't know where Igor is on my screen.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Hi.
hi, I'm Igor. I'm Lawyer CEO. We provide automatic intellectual property protection. So my question is quite simple, but as is. So what do you pay attention at first when you look at the project? It's team, it's tech part, it's jurisdiction, or something else? Yeah.
At seed stage or at Series A stage?
At seed.
We have a spec for our seed stage investments. I would say the most important one is working with a team that in our view is an outlier from some perspective, right? Different teams can spike on different dimensions, whether it's level of ambition, whether it's sheer IQ, whether it's type of experience that's super relevant to the particular project. We just need to see something in the team that we think is really special. The second one is having an insight. If you're trying to do the same thing in the same way 7 other people are doing it, that's not so exciting. But if you have an insight that's yours, that's exciting. And that typically leads to a value proposition that's very compelling for your customers. And then the third one is the least important one. It's market. And it's the least important one because in these early days at seed stage, these markets don't exist oftentimes. They're not real markets. You guys are creating these markets of tomorrow. And I think our human brain sometimes is not set up to dream enough of what these markets might become. UiPath Series A, the software market of RPA was $160 million. Like, that's nothing, that's tiny. But then you had to ask yourself, how many companies, corporates are there who would use this? Every corporate out there would use this. That's an endless market. So I think that's the hardest one, and you have to be really open-minded. And we actually don't define it as market, as market size. We define it as positive market dynamics. If it's a shrinking market that exists and is shrinking, then it's probably really not that interesting. But even if it's something where we think it's small today and we can dream, are there some positive dynamics? And there are many companies, I mean, when we did Airbnb at seed, I don't know, honestly, that a lot of people thought that so many people would sleep in other people's houses. Like, today it sounds obvious, but back then, I don't think it was that obvious. So we try to not overweight this market part too much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And one more,
please.
Yeah, thanks. What about MRR in a company? Do you also pay extremely attention on this? It is really vital, or you can close eyes on some project if you can see some potential?
We oftentimes invest before there's a product, let alone revenue.
Oh,
it's a luxury to have MRR, but most times we don't.
Yeah, so super. Okay, thanks.
Give me a call.
Thanks, Igor. Let's go next. If that's okay, is it any follow-on question, Igor, or that was off? That was all. Okay. Let's give the pass the floor to Hadi from Contester.
And he wrote something here, but I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah. You should brief us here, Hadi.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for very good advice. It was very relevant, whatever friends asked already. And what I'm going to ask is, because you said that your fund is more for seed, but we are raising pre-seed, so maybe it's not like directly relevant. But I would like to ask, because I'm getting like different messages from different advisors, like investors, because we are raising this pre-seed and we are having like even less than like 300 MRR because we just launched like 2 months ago. But we are having like several pilots and like in the pipeline, they are using our products, some users. Just saying, some of the like advisors, they said like you shouldn't talk with the VC at the moment because it's early. Go and talk with angel investors who are in the same area, who are working in e-commerce, martech, and you don't waste your time and this type of things. And sometimes we go and talk with the VC and we get the same message. They said, oh, it's a little bit early, it's so interesting and it's very good to keep us updated, it's very amazing, just a little bit of more traction, especially in this area, in Estonia, in like East Europe. Like it's a little bit when they want to like write the check, it's a little bit hand is shaking at some point. I don't know why exactly, but this is like a dominant pattern. So talking maybe with 50 like investors, they are kind of the same. Even they are following up because they are really interested. Like it happened like 3-4 times that this we see it, like they are following up. What happened, Hadi? What about Contester? Do you have already some MRR? I said, MRR is not important at the moment. We are like really testing our product and it's new technology. Why should we have MRR? But anyways, what do you add into this process? Should we really like follow like a pathway or just do whatever it takes and see what is the feedback?
Sorry, so the question is if you should keep on talking to VCs or just talk to angels. Is that the question?
Yeah, somehow, yeah.
So I think in less mature ecosystems, of course, investors have been spoiled, right? I remember what it was like, even in London 5 or 7 years ago. Yeah. It's just when you don't have that much competition as a venture capital firm, you are used to, taking things slowly, waiting for some traction. All these ecosystems will mature, and probably in the next couple of years, it's going to be just like in the US, where people invest pre-revenue, pre-product, pre-anything, 2 people and an idea, and that's it. And we've been doing that for a long time. And to be honest, you're just forced to do that when there's a lot of competition. So I suspect that's the answer you've been receiving from VCs. In your particular case, honestly, if you have great angels, I would actually raise from angels, move on, show some traction, and then raise a great seed from VCs. If you have access to good angels, that's what I would do.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually what we're doing. Yeah,
I think that makes sense, especially if it's relevant angels. Sometimes in these early days, they can be super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Hadi, for bringing this up. Let's pass it on to Marion from Werk. Marion?
Yeah. Hi, Luciana.
Hi.
Sorry, I had some echo in the background. So my question would be about fundraising.
No, I hope it's okay now.
That we started fundraising about a month ago. Quickly what we do as well.
Yep.
So we're building an international construction labor supply network. And we started fundraising about a month ago. And we started with angels, but moved on to VCs as well, as we grew in the revenue quite fast. And now we're in a situation where we have several calls with the VCs. We get the second call or third call, or even due diligence. And then it always ends with this question that, yes, the opportunity is massive, but how will this work? And then we don't exactly know how to answer this right away, because we just launched 2 months ago. So we need time to test, but we also need the money from the VCs. So how would you explain it to the VCs that how to say that we need to test this opportunity to build the product out?
I think again, I don't know your business, so it's a little bit hard for me to answer this question, but I think you just need to paint a picture to investors of how things might work in an ideal scenario. I think it's a relevant question. Like, how does the business model work? It sounds like that's the question from VCs. And I think that although you don't have the data, you can paint a picture of what you think things will look like and share that with them. And everyone is aware that, you know, projections are projections, and things work out, you know, play out as they play out. Alternatively, raise a little bit of money from angels, go and prove this for a few months, and then go raise a venture round. That's the other option.
Yeah, we've been thinking about that too.
Yeah, go and execute for another 2-3 months, and then maybe raise a seed round. That's something else you could do.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marion. I saw Dimitri, then Irina. Make sure you queue up. There's less than 1 hour that we have reserved with Luciana. Dimitri, could you go next?
Yes. Hello, Luciana. I'm Dimitri. I'm CEO of D Groups. We treat a very niche product. It is a platform that is a software service for groups. 51% of the global market, it's groups. We started some months before COVID, and what is happening? First of all, COVID came and everything was crushed in our industry. People that were not traveling, and the ones that were traveling, they were not traveling with groups. In the meantime, we managed to be already present in 63 countries. We have a lot of content inside. We keep on filling with content. We have the majority of the association, tour operators, and hotel chains inside the platform. But the group travel industry, it is someone that the tour operator is booking for not the next season, but the season after. So right now we're planning Easter and summer of next year. Tourism just started. We are starting to be in need of a next round of a seed or pre-seed investment, but we do have operators. We do have groups starting to move. We still don't have that much of revenue. And it's easy if someone is in the market to explain why, because it will take time, and groups that will be materialized a lot later. But the thing is that a lot of European events companies, they ask for also to have a revenue, something that let's say we don't have enough. The risk is that they're gonna downgrade our evaluation and what in reality can be. So I don't know which is the best approach to have in order not to downsize your company, not to downsize your idea, having a small revenue. I don't know if you can give me any suggestions regarding.
I think in life you just need to choose the best option that's in front of you. So if the options are lower valuation or no fundraise, I guess lower valuation is the better option. I don't know if that was
It's more or less that. We do have investors that are willing to do the round, but no one wants to be a lead investor. And I think we're gonna struggle a lot in order to raising our value a lot, or at least what it was supposed to be.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's normal, but you don't want to give much now, because when the market picks up, it's going to be a completely different story.
Yeah, of course, I understand that. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Every approach, even if people do understand that, yes, okay, we do understand that, and they see that groups are moving, they see some traction, having not revenue that much, they can push it down. And of course, it's a game that they will play in their favor, but I don't know how I can back up that. It's not an easy question, I know.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Oh, it makes me feel better, because if you don't know and I don't know, then probably they don't know how to back me up.
This seems to be the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyways,
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks for raising this, Dimitri. Irina, is the now a right moment for you to jump in.
Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me well. I'm in the train right now. So
It's
hello,
okay.
Luciana.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm Irina. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vaunt. Vaunt is a B2B SaaS solution for residential real estate developers and real estate agencies. We help them streamline the selling and managing process of residential projects. We have MRR at this point. We're close to 6,000 euros per month, and we're looking into raising. The problem we're encountering right now is that I talk to VCs. VCs tell me to talk to VCs who are specialized in prop tech. I talk to VCs specialized in prop tech, and they tell me the investors might be afraid of our solution, what we want to do in the future, because we might replace them somehow. So I was wondering, how does Sequoia look at the prop tech sector?
We look at the prop tech sector as an interesting area. It depends on the business model very much, right? Is it, as you say, SaaS, selling to developers? Is it open door like models that are more focused on consumers? I mean, generally speaking, it's an area that has been underserved for a very long time from a tech perspective.
Yes.
So we're seeing a bunch of interesting stuff, and it's definitely an area we're interested in. But then to dig a bit deeper, I would have to really understand the different business models. But high level, we're excited about it.
Okay.
I mean, feel free to send me a deck after after the presentation. I think you'll have my email from Bogdan.
Okay.
I think you're cutting off, but you're cutting off at the right moment. Irina, once you hear us, you can say that again. Before the connection. Yep. Got that. No worries. Tied to Irina's question. If you can hear us, it's okay, Irina. Once the connection reestablishes. Yeah, cool. Okay. Tied to Irina's question, I would have some sort of a follow-up if it's okay. The floor is still open for questions. What actually defines a good market for a startup? Because I've seen the variations, either a global market or future potential for the product, this positive dynamics. Is there anything else that you consider when defining the market for any given startup?
So as I mentioned, I think this is the trickiest part, honestly, of evaluating an investment opportunity, because you can spend time with the team and you get a sense for the team and what their dreams are and how they'll execute. You look at the product, you play with the product, you talk to customers. I think all this stuff you can understand. You look at the numbers, if there are numbers, you do your homework. I think how a market will evolve is probably the hardest part, and it's the part where you have to dream the most. So what I like to ask myself when I look at a new product, and in order to answer the question, can this be a new market? Can this be a new category? Is, are there a lot of, like, even if today companies are not buying this product, if it's B2B SaaS, is the value proposition of this product interesting to many customers out there? So I made an investment also in Eastern Europe a few years ago in a company called Miro. Maybe you use it for a remote collaboration. At the time, it was a Series A company. It did have a few million in ARR, but it was not big, not seed stage, but later on, but not big. It was definitely online. Whiteboarding was not a market, and very few enterprises were using it. But I asked myself the question: is this something that every company out there would benefit from? And the answer is yes. I suspect many teams and many companies will use online collaboration, especially in a remote world, in a remote work world. And even before COVID, I was a believer in remote work. So the market wasn't there, but could it become a market? Yes. Or another example in food delivery. So I led an investment in Deliveroo back in 2014. And at the time, I asked myself, and the market size was one of the biggest questions, which today might sound ridiculous, but back then you had to ask yourself, hey, they were active in 2 neighborhoods in London, the most affluent neighborhoods in London, right? So you had to ask yourself, would people outside of these super wealthy areas pay the £2.50 delivery fee, which is what they charge in the UK? Or is this a proposition for a tiny group of people? And, you know, I made the bet that other people would, and it would become larger, and it could expand to other cities and even other countries. But honestly, it was not so obvious at the time. So I think the market part is the trickiest one. And I really think you have to let yourself dream.
Got that. Thanks for sharing. Maybe you wanted to add something, Bogdan? I'm trying to look at the open mics that I see. Please feel free to jump in. Sandro, I think that was a clap.
Oh, no, yeah, but I'm not raising my hand. I always confuse it, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
this is more a question into you know, how is Sequoia competing in the world? How are you guys being disrupted? You know, what keeps you up at night, and how are you trying to you know, keep leading the way and staying relevant? Hopefully, you know, if you can answer like in 2 regards, in the larger scale of things, and also in your relationship with your founders.
I would say in my relationship with founders, I haven't really felt it. In the bigger scheme of things, yeah, we're being disrupted from every angle possible, right? Or people are trying to disrupt us from every angle possible because, hey, technology is a great business and venture capital candidly is a great business. So a lot of people are trying to get in it. So you have the Tigers of the world that started late stage and are coming earlier, and the Kudus of the world and other hedge funds coming earlier. So we've always been fully integrated. What does that mean for you? For you, it means that we have a seed fund, so we can start investing at seed. We have a Series A fund, so we can lead Series A's. We have a growth fund, so we can lead Series B's and above. We have an $8 billion pre-IPO fund, so we can invest in your company when it's worth $10 billion or whatever it might be worth before going public. So we've always had pockets of capital for every stage of the company, which means that for us as a platform, it's a bit harder for our other people to disintermediate us, which is how we responded to this. The other thing we did, I don't know if you read about it, but the other thing we did is we changed our fund structure completely. So we don't raise funds every 2 years anymore, which is what venture capital firms do. We have an evergreen. And what does that mean? As I mentioned before on the call, it means that if the pitch for Tiger was, hey, I'm going to give you cheap money and I'm a public investor, so I'm not going to sell when you go public. We can say now, ideally, we want to be investors for 10 years after companies go public, which actually the Tigers of the world and the Kudus of the world don't do. They tend to be in and out. So because we're vertically integrated, I think we're in a better position. But yes, absolutely, it's a competitive world. We tend to win win over the founders that we want to win over. But of course, valuations are higher, and we don't always end up investing at the valuations that we would hope to invest at. But generally speaking, we've been really humbled by the reception of founders in general in Europe since we started here. So the way we feel it most is the level of valuations. That's, you know, it's we still have to, you know, if a hedge fund pays X, if X is super crazy, you can't go in with half the valuation, right? Even if you don't have to pay the same, it's still higher than where it was a couple of years ago or 5 years ago. But what gives me a lot of comfort is that technology companies are also getting bigger than anyone ever thought, or at least than I thought. And going back to the market question, I think that's what it is. Some of these markets are just being eaten by technology, right? And these companies are growing and growing and growing, getting more consumers and more consumers or more enterprises. And there's just no end in sight. It's like an avalanche. Technology is literally taking over the world. So on the one hand, valuations are a lot higher. On the other hand, these companies are also becoming a lot larger.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Very thoughtful. Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Thanks as well, Sandro. Would you share some of the recommendations that you give to founders, to startups that want to approach Sequoia? Anything in specific, in particular, other than like the
I would say, honestly,
information
it's
that
always,
can
sorry,
be
go ahead,
found
sir.
easily? Yeah.
I would say it's always a lot easier when you get an introduction, a warm introduction through Bogdan or through any common contact. I would say that's always easier. I like to say that we respond to 95% of cold emails we get. I don't want to say 100 because I'm sure there's some email that we miss at some point. So if I say we respond to everything, I'm sure there's one person who will say we didn't respond to my email. I don't know when. But we try to be responsive culturally. Yeah, we try to be responsive culturally, but I will say it's always, always, always much easier to come through an introduction.
And once that happens, can you share more about the decision process that takes place within your team, or your own decision process, to add on the things that you already mentioned, scattered across the interaction?
Of course. So we get an email, we look at the content, and we think, this could be interesting, or you know what, this is just not the right fit. If we think it's not the right fit, we're going to respectfully say it's not the right fit, and then it's better for everyone's time, and we tend to be very transparent. If we think this could be interesting, then we take a call. And after that call, you get a sense for the founder, you have a flavor, you get a better sense for the business model, the market they're addressing. And then after that, if we still think, oh, this could be the right fit for Sequoia, then we go and start doing our homework. We talk to customers, we look at competitors, we do our homework, we spend more time with the founders. That's a really big part of decision making. And ideally in person. Honestly, I'm not into this whole Zoom decision making process. Like, it just doesn't work for me very well. So try to spend time with the founders. And then at some point we have a partnership presentation. So let's say I have conviction as a supporter of the company, as a champion of the company internally. We make decisions as a group, then we have a partnership presentation, and the founder presents, and then we make a decision as a group.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Sounds pretty straightforward, but it gets lost in the seeing the investors so high. This is something that came up recently, and it gave us as well this other perspective that the investors have their own problems when trying to reach founders. Does that happen to you, or is that happening often to you as a fund, having problems to actually convince founders to get in and get invested in those companies?
Convince founders to work with us.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, listen, as Sandro mentioned earlier, it's of course a very competitive market. I would say it's been honestly very humbling to work on the Sequoia platform because founders react really well. But yes, we need to pay healthy valuations. We need to explain how Sequoia works very clearly, why Sequoia is different, why the brand is powerful, the fact that we've been doing this for 50 years with companies like Stripe and Klarna and DoorDash and Airbnb. Anyway, the list goes on. So of course, yes, it's clearly more competitive than ever, which I actually think is a good thing. It's good for founders. It keeps us on our toes. It makes us do better work. Competition is good for everyone.
And in terms of the founders, so whatever you are saying, it gives me the opportunity to ask something more. But please feel free to jump in. As for the founders, in your experience, have you noticed in the recent years some shifts that they might have, special requests, or something that they they pay more attention to when building the relationship with you as an investor? today or in the recent years compared to more than around a decade ago? Is there any major shift that happened in the founders' mindset or in the founders' way of operating that you can share with us?
Let's put it this way. I think Europe was an early, because if we can talk about Europe as a whole, Europe really has many small ecosystems, but if we talk about it as a whole, I think it was very early. I think now it's starting to mature. It's still, in the early days of maturity, but I think it's starting to mature. I think when the ecosystem was very early, there was not that much access to capital, and honestly, in terms of balance of power, if you call it that, it was really with the investors. I would say now things have flipped because Europe is extremely interesting. We have more engineers than the US. We have more technical talent than the US. Now we also have the level of ambition, the commercial DNA. So Europe is really flourishing now, which means that, of course, VCs like Sequoia have opened offices. Other VCs from the US are looking at the European ecosystem. There are local funds. There's a lot more capital than ever before, which means that I would say that if you want to call it the balance of power or the dynamics, they're much more favorable to founders. So yes, of course, I think founders are more sophisticated. They're more focused on choosing the right firm. They're more focused on spending time and choosing the right partner within the right firm. And I think all of that is great. I think it's really good, and it's part of a maturing ecosystem. And I think it's, again, it forces all of us to do better work. So I think that's great.
Does this give you as well as Sequoia an advantage? I mean, is the power law of distributing the fund somehow changed as well? Not looking for the winner of the fund, like to return the whole fund, as in simple maths, it's a way of operating a fund. Do you have something special in regards to this as well, or you do look for the big winner of a period as well, at least to actually return some of the funds, like money?
I'm sorry, I don't follow the question.
Has this changed in some way, or does Sequoia have another perspective, probably tied to the fact that they keep stakes in the company, in regards to how a fund operates in general? Looking for the big winner of a fund to actually return most of the money that the fund invests. Does Sequoia approaches this differently?
Bogdan, can you help me?
Can you help me as well, Bogdan? Thanks, Luciana. Sorry.
So I think Alex's question was about the change of your business model. So first of all, I'm really sorry, my internet broke down a couple of hours ago. I have been connecting and disconnecting a couple of times, so I haven't listened to all your conversation. So Alex's question was about the fact that giving your change fund model, does that change the way you look at deals? So like the rule of thumb is that the winner of a fund should at least return the fund, right? That's like, let's say the general
at least the perspective
in the venture. Does your changing model change that in any way? Or do you still apply the same math?
We don't think about it in terms of math. I think it's very difficult when you invest early to do the math, because like, what are you going to project? There's nothing. It's 3 people and a presentation. It's very hard to say this company is going to be worth $10 billion and we're going to own 10%. So the way we think about the world is, can this company become a generational company? And in 99% of cases, even when you dream that it could get there, many things will get in the way. I mean, you guys know much better than me that building a successful startup is the hardest thing. So the rule of thumb is that we have to be able to dream together with a founder that the company they're building can be an iconic company, a legendary company. And many companies just don't get there, again, because it's really hard, and that's okay. But we don't think about it in terms of like doing our math. because it's just very hard in the early days. It's more, can this company just become very large and be around for a long time?
Can I follow up with a couple of questions for you, Luciana?
Yes.
So I remember talking to you about the UiPath deal. And at that point, you mentioned that one of the things that you have proactively done in the due diligence process was discussing with the clients of the startup.
Yes.
So I was just wondering, how does that does that work at Series A? Does it work at seed? Do you do that all the time? How is that process going on?
Honestly, when there are customers, this is for me the most important part of doing my homework. Because customers speak the truth. Like, they will tell you why they love the product, why they don't love the product, if they're gonna buy more of the product, if they wanna get rid of the product, they will tell you everything you need to know. That's the lifeblood of the company, right? So spending time with founders is probably the most important thing. The second most important thing is talking to customers, if there are customers. Oftentimes we invest before there are customers, and that's okay as well.
Mm-hmm. When do you, this is a question that I have you, especially because you mentioned investing before having customers. And maybe this is something that every founder should take for him. How do you evaluate the founding team and the plans of a product, or against this idea of building an iconic company? So what are there any like specific things that you look at? Like, think about the last time you did that. What were the things that you evaluated more than like you focused on? Because sometimes I feel that founders don't apply this type of analysis for themselves as well. So they don't go very deeply into thinking, do I know the secret sauce here? Do I have this deep knowledge that can create a category, etc., etc. So again, going back to my question, pre-client or even pre-product, what are the things that you're looking at when you're investing in such a company?
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. You might have been disconnected, so I don't want to be super repetitive. Sorry if I'm repetitive, guys. No. Just stop me if I talk too much about this. So we invest in founders that we think are outliers, but outliers, it doesn't mean the same thing for founder A and for founder B. There needs to be some dimension where we think this founder spikes. So it can be sheer level of ambition. So I led the seed for a company called Hopin, which has become very large. And I remember sitting down with a founder, and it was a one-person company, and the founder would say, before COVID, I'm going to be the fastest growing startup in the world next year. And it's, it's like sheer level of hunger and ambition that was a real spike. He was also very product focused and has many other traits. This was one dimension that I was really, really impressed with. With other founders, it's sheer IQ. The founders of Stripe, when Michael Morris made that seed investment, they were both #1 math Olympics. I don't know all the details. Very, very, very intelligent. It can be really relevant background. So I just invested in a seed company. It's just 2 founders. They're leaving Uber to start a company. It's not public yet, so I won't share, but it's also a very operationally complex company. So they just have the perfect experience. They were at Uber for 7 years. It's a very operationally complex business. It makes so much sense that this other new business that's also operationally complex would be built by someone with their profile. So it's about having a spike on some dimension that's relevant to your business. And that's relevant to your business part, we think about that as founder market fit. Like, are you the right founder for this particular market?
Cool, excellent. Thank you. I'll stop here and give back the floor to Alex for the final questions.
Yeah, so if this is okay, if you still have some thoughts, questions, please shoot. If not, we will use these last minutes to recap and build up. From this, we'll build up a quick interview that we'll give you to review. And we'll do this by just recapping a couple of things of the things that you already said. But until we do that, maybe there are some things that you want to share, like some final thoughts for the founders in call, and for the ones that will also review the call afterwards, coming from you, Luciana, and also from the
happy
founders.
to be here. Thank you for having me. I think the European market is maturing a lot, which is wonderful. There are a lot more wonderful founders. There's a lot more capital, which will make life easier for these wonderful founders. So I think things are very positive in our world in technology.
Please, Sandro.
Yeah, I have a question on that, because something that caught my attention was what you said about, you know, the necessity, the need to meet in person to see if, you know, I want to invest in this. I'm a huge believer of that. Sometimes I talk to somebody as a VC, and I'm like, is this a person that I'll be like willing to receive money? He could throw $1 billion here right now at me, and I'll be like, I don't know you. Like, why would I accept your money? But it's more on the presence of the geography. So I believe that by the end of the day, I'm just a guy in an office, just trying to hack the world, right? It's just that it happens to be that I'm doing it in Vilnius right now. And at some point, you know, when we discuss and we talk about, you know, the European market, the Central European market, for me, at least from my point of view, that makes little sense, of course, because at some point, my decision as an entrepreneur was to detach from an ecosystem or from a geography and just use my laptop or my computer and my team to hack the world. What's your point of view on that? I mean, like, how localized startups need to be? Of course, with the remote first thing. I was working remote, like, I don't know, for forever before this even started. Is there truly like a geolocation to the startups? Or do you see something coming along that? Like, I mean, I truly don't care where you are or where you're connected.
We definitely truly don't care where you are. I think there's less and less of that, for sure, and especially with COVID, where, you know, we're all forced to be on Zoom, and you can talk to anyone in any time zone from your living room. I think there is less and less of that, and I think the world has become more flat from a technology perspective. I agree with you. I think that's fair.
Thanks.
Thanks for raising this, Sandro. Let me just put you, Luciana, on the spotlight so we capture a proper screen with you. Could you also tilt a bit your camera or your laptop lead, whatever you're using, just tilt it towards you a bit?
I can, because it's a screen.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay.
We're good like this then. Alrighty. I would love to just recap the way Sequoia supports founders from even seed stage to Series A and beyond, and that's one thing.
You want me to talk about that again?
No, just to recap the highlights of it.
So the reason of this moment is that we are recording it and we're doing a small movie that we're gonna post on all our social channels and kind of distribute it so it gets amplified. And the way we do it is we ask the 2-3 more, let's say, interesting questions. And
can we just record it separately? I find, is that okay if we record it separately?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll follow up. Nice to meet you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice
Thanks
to
a
meet
lot.
you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.